A man who's one of the tops in the business at evaluating National Football League talent and also seeing a lot of these guys in person while part of ESPN's college football coverage. He is Todd McShay back here on the Rich Eisen Show from the worldwide leader in sports. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Rich. How are you?
I got to tell you, I'm not pleased, Todd. I'm not pleased. I just saw Schefter.
Okay, what's up?
I just saw Schefter say Chase Young's not going to participate in on-field drills. Are we getting there where to the point where the top defensive prospect is going to treat the combines on-field drills like a quarterback? Is that what we got now? What's going on?
I'm sure we're inching towards it, and I'm sure there are a lot of crusty old scouts that are angry, and it's frustrating, but it is what it is, and you gotta adjust. I mean, usually the defensive guys all show up and participate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, usually it's the quarterbacks and a receiver who's got a little strain in his calf here and there, but usually the rest of the guys come and work out and compete. He didn't play that well down the stretch. His final 3 games weren't that great, and I finished up his tape, and I love him physically, and you go over the last 5 years of edge rushers, and his grade is right up there with all the other top guys. I mean, I've got a 95 grade on Chase Young. Had a 95 on Bosa, Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, Myles Garrett, and then a 94 on Bradley Chubb coming out of NC State. So those are the top 5 edge rushers, in my opinion, in the last 5 years. He certainly is up there, but the Bosa's worked out, even though, Nick ran what was it, he ran in the 4.7s. I want to say that Joey ran a 4.8, 4.82, and they were both really disappointed by it. Myles Garrett had a great workout, but it doesn't matter. Just show up and compete, I guess, is my whole point. And so, yeah, there's some frustration there. It doesn't look like Joe Burrow is going to throw, from what I understand, but we'll see what happens there. And obviously, Tua Tagovailoa can't do anything because of the hip injury, and he'll still be one of the biggest focuses of the entire combine coverage, I'm sure, and what he's doing and where he's eating and who he's meeting with and how people are responding to him and the leadership he's showing on the field and this, that, and the other thing. But, it's frustrating to see a guy like Chase who still has some things to prove, deciding not to work out.
Well, I guess the point is that he's either going to be number 1 overall because Joe Burrow is going to force his way out of Cincinnati,
Yep.
And Cincinnati's going to say, to heck with it, we'll go with the surefire kid from the Ohio State, or he's going to be number 2 because Joe Burrow is going to either Cincinnati or whoever trades up to Cincinnati to go get him. So I guess he's just like, I'm number 1, I'm number 2. Why do I got to do this? I'll work out at Columbus and whatnot, even though that gives off the impression that he doesn't want to compete. And I guess that's his prerogative. So let's take this one at a time, starting with Burrow. He's got 9-inch hands, Todd. What do we make of this?
It's funny. It's not funny. I put some stock into the hand span.
Okay.
But what is funny to me is that Jake Fromm had 8 7/8 of an inch hand span, measuring from the end of your pinky to the end of your thumb. And then you've got 9 inches for Joe Burrow. And for some reason, we're going to look at those numbers, and scouts are going to look at those numbers and say, 8 7/8. When you get in that 8 category, I've legitimately gone back a 17-year study of combine results that I have. 17-year study, there's not a single quarterback who had anywhere in the 8-inch, 8-inch range for hand span that has had sustained success in the NFL. But 9-inch, there are some guys right at 9 inches. So it's one of those things. It's a kind of the Mendoza line. It's a red flag number, whatever you want to say. Joe Burrow, 9 inches, there are some guys that have had success. It is a little bit of concern in terms of ball control, but you watch him play, and it was never really an issue. There isn't anything that jumps out on tape in terms of throwing in the rain or protecting the football that really concerns you or jumps out when you evaluate him. So you have to look at both sides. You have to evaluate the tape versus the number. But that 8 7/8 inches is different from 9 inches, whether you like it or not, and it's a ridiculous thing to say because it's 1/8 of an inch.
Well, 9 is also the number of bells that he will be at which he will be sitting down on Tuesday in the morning at a podium and meeting with the media for the first time at 9 a.m. and on Tuesday. And I imagine it's just going to be put to him point blank. Is there an issue between you and the Bengals? Do you want to go play for him? Any form or format of what gives from the media to Joe Burrow? What are you hearing amongst your evaluators, scouts, and your contacts? Is there any smoke? Is there a fire? What do we got here on the Burrow and Bengals front, Todd?
I'm actually really close with Jordan Palmer, and he's training with Jordan Palmer.
Yep.
And obviously Carson Palmer has said what he said. To be completely honest with you, I haven't asked Jordan yet because I hate asking blunt questions like that to put people on the spot. But I'm going to have to ask him when I see him on Tuesday, tomorrow, and just see what he says, because it's becoming such a situation, and everyone in the league is kind of talking about it, and it's all rumors, And any question that he's answered, if you really go look at the context, it's because he's been asked that, and he comes up. He's a different cat. If you meet with him, I've met with him a couple times, 30 minutes at a time, and he's a little bit of a different cat in that he doesn't care what you think. And I remember Brian Greasy and I have done games for the last few years, and we walk out of meetings, especially with quarterbacks, and Brian's as intelligent as anyone I've ever been around in terms of evaluating quarterbacks and just knowing the position. And every time we walk out, we usually, I would say 9 out of 10 times, usually we'll say, oh, that guy was impressive, and he'll be like, yeah, and vice versa. Or, I'm not so sure. With Joe, we walked out of the room, and I was like, what'd you think? And he's like, I don't know what to think. I was like, I don't either. And then you get to know him a little bit more, and it's just that he's so confident in himself, and he kind of attacks the quarterback position like a linebacker because his brother played linebacker, his dad's a 20-plus year coach, his other brother played safety, and both at Nebraska. I mean, he's just kind of a tough guy playing the quarterback position. And so everything about his personality tells me that he's not the type of guy that's going to say no or try to pull an Eli Manning and force a trade and those sorts of things. But the fact that he spent all this time with Jordan Palmer and around Carson Palmer a little bit and knowing that he wants to compete and win, it makes me concerned that there could be something there.
No, I know. And then the connection to T.J. Houshmandzadeh is working with him as well.
Exactly. And the wide receivers there.
He has given more voice to the, be careful about going to the Bengals front. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. And then just his comment where he said that he had leverage at one point. And again, I might be taking it completely out of context, but he did drop that L word. And the question is like, look, you don't have leverage in terms of how long your contract is or what you're paid. You're slotted. So what is the leverage then? What leverage do you have unless let's put it this way. What leverage is there to exact unless you intend not to go? Right. So that's
really the only leverage. And trying to force and maybe trying to force Cincinnati to, and when free agency starts very soon, force them or at least put pressure on them to go out and get some players and try to get some wide receivers and try to get a better supporting cast around them. Although, they've got talent. If everyone's back healthy for the Bengals, they've got talent on the offensive side of the ball. So, the leverage thing was the only one that was interesting because it is a trigger word. And what is the leverage? The leverage is I'm going to try to force a trade. But the problem, if you're Cincinnati, who are you going to trade with? If you move to 5 and there's a proposed deal, you move to 5 with the Dolphins and get a bunch of picks, you could all of a sudden, wake up and Burrow's gone, Tua's gone, and now you better love Justin Herbert. And I don't see Justin Herbert from Oregon as a top 10 pick, in my opinion.
You don't?
He probably will go in the top 10. I just don't see that. I don't see that on tape. I see inconsistency. I think there's potential there. I think he can develop. I think Jordan Love from Utah State has a lot of potential as well, but he's even further away from being ready to play in the NFL. My point is there are 2 quarterbacks in this draft. And if you don't get one of those 2, and Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa, then you're on the outside looking in. And I just don't have any strong conviction in any of the other quarterbacks past those two.
Well, and Todd McShay here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's game this out a little bit more, because the Bengals do have, and I know Bengals fans may not want to hear it, it's not like the cupboard's totally bare. I mean, Andy Dalton is there, right? I mean, so you could technically stay the course there. There is Trevor Lawrence next year for whatever sweepstakes you might want to throw your hat in that ring. And also, the word is that Burrow wants to go to Carolina. And now the reason why that word might be existing is that Joe Brady's been hired to be the offensive coordinator there. And Matt Rule has got 7 years. And if you're going to go to a spot where, you know, the owner has made a statement, and he's made a statement with his aggressiveness in getting Rule and getting Joe Brady and giving them the contracts, and you're concerned about being in a spot where there's a riptide of coaches and offensive coordinators and your whole career is going to go down the toilet because of all that, then that's where he wants to go. How real do you think that would be, possibly, Todd?
I mean, you can't go to Carolina. How do you get a trade with Carolina going from what, 8 all the way up
7?
To
it would be 7.
7. Sorry, 7 up to 1. I mean, that's you're talking about the second and third this year, a first next year, and probably a second. I mean, the amount that it would cost Carolina to go up and go get that guy in Joe Burrow. Like, and I'm sure they love him. How do you not love him? Based off of one of the best college football seasons we've ever seen from a quarterback in the history of the game. And then knowing that the offensive coordinator who took him from a game manager to this season that we just saw, a national championship and a Heisman Trophy, is there in Carolina. Like, I get that, but how do you move up, and what's the cost to go do that? I think you would have to wind up doing like maybe a trade. I don't know, 3, 4, somewhere in that range. And then have the Bengals draft him and then trade after the fact, something like that, where at least you're not giving up all of that compensation, and then you make a deal, but it's still going to cost you a ton in order to go get one guy. And as much as I love Joe Burrow, I would rather move back. If you're telling me that Joe doesn't want to play for me and that this could be an issue, well, if that's the case, I'm not saying it's the case, but if that's the case, I would rather move back and get a bunch of picks and then next year be in the running for Trevor Lawrence, who I think is better than both of these guys, then wind up just stuck there and drafting a quarterback who doesn't want to be in Cincinnati and who has 9-inch hands, is going to have to play in Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Cleveland for the vast majority of his season.
Todd McShay here on the Rich Eisen Show. What are you hearing about Tua? He's got the 10-inch hands, we know that. But what are you hearing about his hip? What are you hearing about? And he's going to blow away the meetings. He's going to come out of this combine with everybody falling head over heels in love with him. The Dolphins might fall back in love with him based on whatever reporting you might hear or believe in. What are you hearing about Tua going in, Todd?
It's all medical. I mean, he's a stud. If you were, and I think I don't know if I've said this to you before. I know I've said it before, but if you were to give me a crystal ball and promise me 10 years of health, I would take Tua over Joe Burrow, even though I love Joe Burrow. And I don't think there's a big difference. But I think Tua I think he's special. I think he's special from a leadership standpoint, the poise that he brings. He's today's NFL quarterback. Joe is too. I mean, they're both so great in the pocket. They have such a great natural feel. Their instincts, how quick they are with their progression reads. But Tua, his deep accuracy is exceptional. It's unique. And his touch and timing and his ability to just kind of maneuver within the pocket and go from read 2 to read 3, where most guys start to panic and their eyes drop and they take off and run. He's just like, I'm cool, I'm good. And he works through it. And he almost, the ball's coming out almost before you can imagine him seeing what he's seeing. And so that's what makes him special to me. So listen, I know the same things that everyone else knows. He's a phenomenal football player. He would arguably be the first overall pick if he was healthy and didn't have the hip injury. And it's all going to come down to medical. We've seen progression, and it's good progress, but there's so much more to learn. And the interesting part for me, Rich, is the game of chicken that's going to go on between, the Dolphins and the medical report. Because the Dolphins are the team that are able to, 5 picks in the first 2 rounds, 3 in the first round. they're the team that has the most ammunition to move up and go get him. But how long do you wait before you go move up? Or is a team like Carolina or, anyone but behind them that needs a quarterback, are they going to just pull the trigger and wind up at number 2 or number 3? And now you're sitting there and saying, we missed out. And
yeah.
So what do we do with all these picks? We get a bunch of good players, but we're not going to get our quarterback.
I'll tell you what, Todd, and that you hit that spot on, Todd McShay here from ESPN, because I asked that of Daniel Jeremiah last week, and I'm about to spend an absurd amount of time with him in a booth at the combine.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you. I said basically, like, if I'm the Dolphins, you got to go get him now, because everybody's going to fall in love with him, and the price is going to go up. And to me, the report from Armando Salguero that the Dolphins kind of dig Justin Herbert, maybe as much, if not more, than Tua, sounds to me that they're trying to drive the price down that Detroit's going to either ask or already has asked. And his answer is like, you can't make that trade until you're 1,000% sure on the medical. You can't do that. You can't do that and then have it all of a sudden come up draft day. Oh yeah, there's been a setback with his hip. You just can't do that. Is what his point was.
Right, and so you've saved up for the past couple of years to get here, to have these 5 picks. That everyone's whatever for Tua, tanking for Tua, fine. But the bottom line is they put themselves in a position to go get a guy this year. And so now you're going to give up those picks and move up, and all of a sudden your medical staff comes back and says, we're not comfortable, or he's not progressing, or we think it's going to be degenerative. He's not going to be the same player. I mean, there's so many things that can come up in the next couple of months.
Right.
And you're talking about, not only giving away extra picks, but then making a $30 million investment in a player of guaranteed money, forget all the other stuff, but guaranteed money, $30 million, and expecting him to be the face of your franchise and be the guy, the first quarterback you've really had in decades. And all of a sudden you're sitting there and your medical staff is saying no. So now if you make a deal to go to 3, and Burrow's gone at 1, let's say hypothetically, and Chase Young goes at 2, now what do we do? We're going to move up and give away those picks to take Herbert? No, absolutely not. So we're going to take Derek Brown, a really good defensive tackle, but we gave away these picks and we could have maybe gotten Derek Brown at 5, or Jeff Okudah, the cornerback from Ohio State, at 5, or Isaiah Simmons, the safety or the linebacker from Clemson, at 5. So it just doesn't make sense. But then, if you're sitting there in musical chairs and you're all of a sudden you're without a seat, and now Justin Herbert's the answer, I'm telling. I like Justin Herbert. I think he has a lot to work with. I think he's working on becoming more of a leader, but he's a self-proclaimed introvert. He's inconsistent. He's never had to carry a football team. Herbert is such a drop-off from these other 2 quarterbacks. I don't know. It is a really tough position that Tom Garfinkel, the CEO and president, Chris Greer, the GM, Flores, the head coach. It's a really brutal situation that they're in, trying to make this decision based off of information that you just don't have yet.
Last thing for you, Todd, before I let you go. The answer to a question going into the combine that you're eager to have answered because you think the combine can answer it would be what? What's the one thing going in?
Well, there are 337 players invited to the combine. And the one that I am most interested and most excited to watch is Henry Ruggs, the wide receiver from Alabama. Can he break the number? We're going to be watching you, and you're going to be covering it. And the only thing you guys are going to be talking about when the wide receivers are running is when the R's come up and Ruggs is there. Is he going to break the number? Because, reportedly he can run like a 4.2, 4.21, somewhere in that range. So we'll see if it happens. And does that change his evaluation? No, he's fast. He's not a great route runner. He still has developing to do. I wouldn't take him to top 10. Jerry Jeudy, his teammate at Alabama, CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma, they're better wide receivers. But he is going to be one of the most intriguing players to watch in the entire draft. And Jalen Reagor, keep an eye on him. Nobody knows him. TCU wide receiver. He's going to run a fast number as well, and I think it's going to wind up helping him a lot.
That'll be Thursday night, and then I'll see you in Indianapolis, Todd. I look forward to seeing you, brother.
Can't wait,
Thanks
man.
for the call.
Safe travels.
Right back at you. That's Todd McShay at McShay13.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.